heaven is a song that we can sing, a sacred gift from God.
So I'm Melanie, and that's Deanna. And co-presenting is really hard to do, so we're just going to go one after the other. It's an honor for me to be here with you this week, to meet all of you, and some that I haven't met yet. I'd love to get a chance to speak with all of you. When we've heard our speakers speaking, I've heard a lot of people introduce themselves in their language at this assembly to begin their presentation by saying who they are. So I want to do that, and I was thinking about how I would do this, and I thought that it would be in High German because that's my first language. But I was talking to my parents one night, and they insisted that we were Plattdeutsche Lied, Low German people. So I guess I'm from the Low German tribe of the Mennonite nation, as Adrian was saying yesterday. So I'm going to try this. I only started speaking Low German a couple of years ago. I heard it all my life, and so I understood it. So hopefully I don't butcher this. Et zie Melanie Kampen, dochter van Hein en Leni Kampens, uit de Oekraïne en Sibirien, et die eerste generation op diesem land. My name is Melanie Kampen, daughter of Heinz and Helene Kampen, who are sitting up there, who were born in the Ukraine and Siberia. I'm first generation to be born on this land. I think it was yesterday in a workshop where Brander McDonald talked about how his parents would always tell him, remember who you are, who you belong to. This is a really familiar phrase for me to hear. My community often said to me, remember where you came from. What they were really saying was, know the stories of your parents, of your relatives, of the other Mennonites who traveled with your family and lived in community with them. So when people said, okay, so this idea of remember where you came from, knowing your people, because this is where your identity rests. You get your identity from your community. That's what I was taught growing up. So I felt like I knew my identity. I knew the stories. My dad taught history, among other things, and I learned about Mennonite history in school. I listened to the stories that my relatives told at family gatherings. I felt like I constantly heard stories that were about people who were my people. But the nature of a Mennonite identity is that it is a traveling identity. It's an identity of people on the run, at least my ancestors. Of people who, in some cases, had close relation to the land as farmers, but were still largely on the move. Many Mennonites here in Manitoba have been here for several generations and know the land a bit. I've only lived here for 24 years. Yet, even though I was born here, I do not feel, really, that this land is my home. I feel that I have to work to listen to this land. My journey living here on this Treaty 1 land is a journey of learning to listen to the land. But when I put my ear to the earth, I heard silence. What I mean by this is this. I know my history, the stories of migration, of fear and trembling, but I did not know the songs. Yes, I knew hymns that we sang in German and in English, but I did not know the songs of the hearts of the people, the songs of the lands where they traveled from, where they fled to, the songs of the lands that took them in, that sheltered them, the songs of the lands and the oceans that led them across the globe. I think this is because we've stopped singing those songs. And I don't necessarily mean songs in a literal sense here. Perhaps it is because they are too hard to sing. I sense often that they are very sad songs, songs of lament, of grief, of trauma. Perhaps it has been easier to be silent. Perhaps we ought to start singing them again. I don't know. Only the people who traveled through those lands and across those oceans know those songs. And so only they know when the right time is to share them, to sing them again. But I sometimes wonder how we could create spaces for those songs that each person has to be shared. I am trying to hear the song of this land, where I live, along with the songs that I have heard from my parents grandparents, and other Mennonites. And so I want to share with you some of what I have heard from this land. And I want to talk a little bit about the theme passage from Job 12, 7 to 10, and what this passage has taught me about the land. You should all have a little scripture thing. Some of the scripture that I'll read is on there. There's a couple people here in the front that don't. I don't know who has those right now. Thought maybe they can pass them out. The dominant understanding of creation in Christianity, the dominant understanding, which is Western Christianity, comes from Genesis, and the role of humans in the order of creation from Genesis 1, 26 and 27, I'll read. That's not on your paper. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." Now, there's a lot we could unpack here, but I only get 15 minutes, so I'll just say a few things. There are theological interpretations of this passage that have reread it to interpret dominion in the sense of stewardship, as taking care of the earth. But I don't think that this goes far enough yet in deconstructing the narrative that we have of a dominant relationship between humans and the rest of creation. Western Christianity assumes that because humans were created last, they are the apex, the height of creation, that they are at the top of the ladder. But Genesis 1 is not the only creation text in the Bible. This is not the only passage that tells us about our relation to the rest of creation. Listen to the Job text, our theme passage, which should be on your paper. "But ask the animals, and they will teach you. The birds of the air, and they will tell you. Ask the plants of the earth, and they will teach you. And the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of every human being." Wow, what a difference. In this creation story, the animals, birds, fish, and even the plants, the earth herself, are the primary bearers of the knowledge of God. Non-human life forms will teach, tell, and declare their knowledge of the Lord to humans. These terms, teach, tell, and declare, are Hebrew words. Now, I love languages, and so I looked up these in a concordance, and I found some interesting stuff. These three words used here are the Hebrew words, and I don't speak Hebrew, so I don't know if I'm saying these right, but they are yara, nagad, and safar. Yara appears twice in this passage. Here's where it gets really interesting. The word yara, which means to teach, direct, instruct, is also used in Exodus when God commands Moses to teach, yara, the commandments he has received to the Israelites. Another significant use of the word occurs in the Psalms twice when the writer petitions, "Teach me your way, O Lord," and "Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes." That's the same word that's used in Job with regards to the animals. In the Job passage, it is the non-human life forms who will instruct yara, the humans, since they are the ones depicted as knowing something about God that the audience clearly does not. And this instruction takes place basically on the level of Torah teaching for the Israelites, the people of God. The animals, the fish, the birds, the earth will teach God's ways to humans. Some of you might know theologian Randy Woodley. He is Kituwa Cherokee from Oklahoma, now living in Oregon. He also writes about this passage in Job, and he suggests that it paints a picture of humans as creation keepers. In Native communities, he writes, a keeper of a particular ceremony or tradition is someone who has been properly trained for that task, who has been entrusted with it by the community, and who maintains that responsibility through knowledge, experience, and practice. In his interpretation, the Job text invites us humans to be creation keepers and to learn from non-human life forms how to do so in a good way. Randy Woodley also draws on Isaiah 11, 6-9 as a creation story. The wolf shall lie with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hold of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Here, Isaiah gives us a picture of lizards, animals, and humans who know the Lord, all living together. Indeed, this creation story suggests that this picture of creation living in harmony occurs when the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord. The word for knowledge here is the Hebrew word de'ah. The use of this word here is not insignificant. It's a rare term, only appearing 5 other times in the Old Testament. The word is used not to describe just any sort of knowledge, but the knowledge of God. Harmony, healing, and just relations occur when all creation is filled with the de'ah, the knowledge of the Lord. And according to Job, the non-human life forms are the faculty, as Adrian said last night, the faculty who can teach us the ways of God. So when we read these passages from Job and Isaiah as creation texts, we begin to see that all of creation is understood as containing knowledge, wisdom, and power. And all things in creation are involved in a reciprocal sharing of their particular knowledge to maintain balance and harmony in creation. By only focusing on Genesis as a creation text in Scripture, many Christians have lost this understanding of the relation between human and non-human life forms. Here is a posture of humility, receiving the gifts of knowledge, the teachings, the wisdom for how to live well with one another, all our relations. Indeed, many European, Russian, Ukrainian Mennonites, my ancestors, my people, have forgotten this passage. And when they do read it, they tend to interpret it merely as poetry or a metaphor. But I believe that this is more than a metaphor. I think the Job passage is very important for us, to teach us to listen to the land, to put our ear to the earth. Even amidst the anthropocentric, that is, a human-oriented society and worldview of my Mennonite Anabaptist ancestors in the 16th century, there was at least one man who seemed to understand something about this text and our relation to creation that the others did not. His name was Hans Schlafer, and in 1527 he wrote the following, which is quite striking. Moses in the law and Christ in the gospel said that every word or truth is valid when supported by 2 or 3 witnesses. We also have 3 witnesses to instruct in and witness to a true Christian and God-blessed life. These are created things, Scripture, and Christ. Christ commands his apostles to preach the gospel of all creatures. Christ himself in his time taught mainly by means of created things and parables, among them trees, vineyards, fields, seed, dough, bread, fish and weights, oil, lamps, clothing, and many others. The created things are God's book and living text, which everyone can read and understand. I'll read that again. The created things are God's book and living text, which everyone can read and understand, so that on the day of judgment there can be no excuse before the Lord. That is why Job says, "Speak to the earth and she will answer you. Ask the animals and they will answer you. The birds of the air and the fish of the sea will show you," writes Hans Schlafer. As the Cheyenne Mennonites have taught us, as we sing every evening here, creation is a song that we can see, a sacred gift from God. So let's join the harmony.
a sacred